deserve to have the best physical, mental, spiritual, Zealous Wellness with Mike Hollis.
To Zealous Wellness with Mike Hollis. I am your host. Again, I always start off with saying that I'm having a blast with these. I am a lot of fun and just kind of sharing my real life experiences and just things that I experience on a daily basis. And maybe not just for me, from other people as well, but always thinking about subjects to talk about. And again, I apologize for always reverting back to kicking, because but the thing is, I've learned a lot from kicking. It just kind of very in all aspects of life in reality, really. So I really today I want to talk about our capabilities and what we're really capable of. There's a lot of people out there that just don't really know what their full potential really is, and there's a lot of reasons why, and we're definitely going to get into that. But I defeated the odds with my size and lack of athletic ability and lack of strength when I got into the NFL, and I maintained a 9-year career. And so I always reiterate to my athletes when I'm coaching them that you never know what you're capable of until you try things and learn different processes, and just get outside the box, really, is what I'm saying. And so think differently, really. So that's really where I'm going to focus a little bit today, and we're going to talk a little bit about being fearless and faithful. And I had an interesting communication with a gal that got into the 3 International, the company that I'm with, a product wellness company. She's had 35 years of experience in this industry, which is a huge deal for me, because she's going to bring in a lot of people, and that's going to create a lot of volume and income for me on the business side of that. But she's very, very in tune with her body and wellness and all that as well. But she made a quote. She actually made a post on Facebook, and I thought that was really interesting. I'm gonna kind of read it for you guys a little later on. But just keep in mind, we're going to take a little quick break and for to hear a word from our sponsor. But we're gonna talk a lot about what we're capable of doing, and where we can really achieve things that we never really knew possible. And it has a lot to do with being fearless and faithful, honestly. So that's kind of where I'm going to connect the two and kind of get into real life situations. So we'll be back right after our word from our sponsor.
At 3, we want to give you the true health benefits that you're paying for, something you can feel and see a difference quickly. Each product is packed with powerful plant-based nutrients that are combined through a proprietary curation process, and then infused with innovative cellular absorption technologies to ensure the nutrients absorb into the cells for maximum wellness. The quality and effectiveness of our life-changing products is evident by their approval to be included in the well-known Prescriber's Digital Reference, or PDR. PDR has been a valuable resource to the medical doctors and providers in the healthcare community for decades. Our products are GMO-free, clinically studied, and third-party tested, all designed to support health and proactive wellness for everyone.
So I want to really touch upon, a post that a gal by the name of Jennifer had made on Facebook, and I'm gonna read it for you. But I want to, kind of get you to understand really where it kind of relates to us in everyday life, and just really where our mindset is. I do a lot of these podcasts on mindset. We're going to talk about wellness and health and fitness and all that stuff, which I have, of course. But I'm really intrigued by the mindset, because it's incredibly powerful. Trust me, it really is, because there's things that I've dealt with in my life that I never thought were possible, and when you think outside the box and you trust what you're thinking, and you rely on people to to help you out with things as well. But when you have the right people surrounding you, and you have the right ideas and motivation and mindset and kind of enthusiasm, being optimistic. I'm the epitome of optimism, almost to a fault. I've caught myself being a little bit too optimistic at times, but that's just kind of, I'm fearless in a way. I'm optimistic about stuff, and I don't, I don't want to look at it in a negative light. I'm definitely a glass half full kind of guy. I want to make sure that I'm, trying to be the best that I can in all aspects of life. And so that's where I really want to talk about, our capabilities and where, why don't people understand really where, what they're capable really of doing. It's a very, very interesting concept, because these people that don't get outside the box and experiment and have faith and are fearless, they'll never know. And that's kind of where I'm relating to back to this post. And I'll just go ahead and read it for you real quick. I got it right in front of me. So Jennifer says this. She says, someone recently told me I reminded her of Esther from Esther chapter 4, verse 14. Me, Esther, question mark, the woman who saved the nation, but then I sat with it and it stirred something up really deep inside me. She said, Esther did not ask for to be in the position she was put in. She didn't feel ready. She didn't feel brave. But when the moment came, she leaned into purpose over fear. Maybe I've walked through hard things for a reason. Maybe my story, my voice, my presence right here, right now matters more than I realize. Maybe I'm here for such a time as this. If you're reading this and you're feeling the weight of your own moment, know this. You don't have to be fearless. You just have to be faithful. Okay, so I'm kind of like I like both. You when you're fearless, you kind of are faithful in a sense, because you don't fear rejection and things like that, or things that could happen in a negative light, right? So I made a comment and I put some thought into this comment. It's not real long. I said, that was very nicely said, Jennifer. I said, the rewards that come from being faithful and fearless are only recognized by those who are faithful and fearless. Others just will never know. And that's where I'm kind of going with this whole concept, is the fact that if you don't get outside the box and face some fears, and get out of your comfort zone and have faith about things, then you will never know really what you're capable of. And that's really the bottom line. Is the whole premise of this episode is really the capabilities that we're leaving behind. We as humans, the mind, you've probably already heard, our brains are incredibly powerful. Our bodies are powerful. There's a lot of things that we are incredibly powerful within, but the thing is, we don't really acknowledge that, and we don't really take advantage of how powerful we really are as human beings. And I'm living proof of that. And of course, I always talk about my story being such a small guy and playing 9 years in the NFL and doing all those great things I did as a 5'7" officially. I like saying 5'8" on a good day, of course, but I want that extra inch, but being 5'8", 178 pounds, and as a very average athlete, I did things in the NFL that were just as good or better than guys that were twice my size, twice my athletic ability, twice my strength, all that stuff, right? So I know, obviously that was a system. I mentioned that a second ago or a while ago about, understanding and trusting a system that you can be, confident with. I always relate to this. I'm referring to one aspect of kicking, and I was on a conversation. I was on the phone with a kicker the other day, and I was explaining a little bit about my style and my approach to kicking and what the things that other kickers are missing. There's 95% of the kickers out there in the world are missing out on a lot of stuff that they can actually apply to the ball. And I gave them this. I'm very weird about analogies. I kind of think I'm pretty good at them. I get you to think about this, but I came up with one the other day, and again, this is a little bit off subject, but I want you to understand the concept of really what I'm talking about. You guys have all kind of, I want to start off by saying, I hopefully no one's injured in this scenario that I'm referring to. We've all seen maybe a video or something of a train that's got like 100 cars attached to it, and it's cruising about 60, 70, 80 miles an hour down the tracks, and all of a sudden it comes around a corner and there's a car that has stalled. That's where the injury part comes in. Hopefully there's nobody in the car, clearly. But when you see the video of the train hitting that car, the car just explodes into a million pieces, right? Because you've got a lot of weight behind that train, right? Well, that's one scenario. We understand that's realistic. And yeah, there's a ton, well, not a ton, but tons of weight clearly behind that train that's hitting the car and doing a ton of damage, right? Well, if you think about it, now, here's the unrealistic part of this. Now, bear with me. This is kind of silly, but you'll understand what I'm talking about in a second. If you could imagine you have the train, the trains, when the cars are connected to each other, there's those big, iron, steel, I don't even know how they're connected, but they're very, very heavy steel, attachments that attach each car together, right? Well, clearly those don't bend or break, right? They're very solid, right? They're incredibly strong, right? Well, if you bear with me, if you had a train that was 100 cars long, had a bunch of cars attached to it, but they were all the cars were attached to to each other with bungee cords. Now it's going to take a while for the train to get up to speed. Obviously, bungee cords, you understand, they go to a certain length and then they stop. It's just the spring part of the bungee cord that's the resistance or lack of resistance, I should say. So when the train gets going, eventually all the cars will be a certain distance from each other and the train will be cruising right along. Well, imagine that train now that comes around the corner screaming, 80 miles an hour, comes around that corner, doesn't see, sees the car on the tracks, is like, oh crap, I can't stop. Well, when that train hits the car, do you think there's going to be as much damage to that car? Probably not, right? Because really the initial hit would be from the engine of the train because there's some slack between the engine and the next car behind that. And then behind that and behind that. So there'll be a later in the process, you'll have a bunch of cars hitting at a later time. So they don't all hit at the same time. That's what kickers do. Most kickers out there in the kicking world now, they don't use the solidness as that first train, the realistic train that I mentioned at the beginning, right? Their train has bungee cords connecting each car. So there's a bunch of separate little pieces. Okay. The reason, and you understand where I'm going with this, there's not going to be as much damage to the car because it's a heck of a lot lighter. The engine is compared to the engine and 99 more cars that are attached by those iron attachments, right? Those hookups, right? So what I'm really referring to is that if you don't understand a process of getting the most out of you as far as a kicker's concerned, I teach kicking with the body and timing and all that stuff, then you're missing out. And that's where I'm going with this. What we are capable of doing. The kickers out there that are kicking the way that I wouldn't want them to, like the train with the bungee cord, they will never reach their full potential in a sense where they won't really know what they're actually capable of doing if they don't apply their body like I would ask them to do, like use your body to kick the ball, not just your leg. And all the more they break down all these little things, I can go on forever about little things that these kickers do that, more or less take away from their abilities and their capabilities, what they clearly could be capable of. In that instance, doesn't really have to do with faithful. Well, actually, it does. Being faithful is kind of trusting, the process that you've learned, right? So when you're a kicker and you kind of, we've always talked about. In previous episodes, I've always mentioned, the four ladders that go to the top of the building. But we're telling these kickers what the right path is, and this is the method that's going to get the best out of you. Now, trust us or not, most kickers, it just doesn't feel comfortable. I just want to do it my own way. Well, their own way is not going to get them to be their full capability, right? So when you understand really to be fearless and faithful, fearless meaning don't be afraid of change. Heck, the year that I actually started to really get detailed with this kicking technique that I learned from a guy by the name of Jim Gaetano was between my junior and senior year of college. I'd already gone, to college for 3 years. I was already on a full scholarship. I now am having to kind of relearn and just kind of forget everything I knew about kicking. And I'm like, wow, this is a very risky thing. I might lose my scholarship, but I believe I was athletic enough, and I was fearless, and I had faith in his system. Once he explained it to me, I kind of had a few aha moments where I'm like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And so I trusted him from that point on. And that's really where we're in life and everything in life, whatever it is you're doing, you have to understand that there could be a good, opportunity that you learn the right way of doing things. Now, the problem with people who want to do it on their own and don't, trust, other people and don't trust a certain system is they're going to be working really hard on the wrong things. And kind of like that kicker with all the little pieces, they're going to be working, the kickers that are missing out on the body, they have to kick really hard. They have to swing their leg really hard because that's really ultimately all they get to use to kick the football. And so I'm different, clearly, but they didn't have any faith in a system that might have felt weird or what. So they had a fear that, it might mess my form up. And believe me, I talked to a lot of kickers who are really, really mentally like fearful. Like, I have to do this certain routine and I have to do this. And I was like, wow, that is Okay, well, it's not that big of a deal. Don't be afraid to get outside the box. And that's what I'm saying is they will never know. They will never know what it feels like to kick the ball with the body if they never get out of that box, if they don't have, if they're not fearless, if they're not faithful in a different process of what is actually better. And that's the thing too, is you have to kind of understand, and trust it. And again, with being faithful, you have to trust. You've got faith in God and in your life, and you want to give your life to God and let things happen and let God take control, take the wheel. Jesus, take the wheel, right? Like the song. That's having faith and knowing that God's got you. He's okay. He's right behind you. He's got you. He's got a plan for you. Things are going to work out, even though in your mind we don't have the comprehension that he does clearly. So we test him. We have fear because we kind of doubt. We doubt sometimes, and that's another thing too. You mentioned doubt. I doubt this form. I doubt this process. I kind of doubt it. It doesn't really make sense. It doesn't feel good. Whatever. There's a lot of things in our everyday lives that we will challenge ourselves, and that's another point I want to make too, about competition. And really in reality, my situation in football as a kicker, I'm competing really against myself. I'm not competing against, unless obviously they're bringing people in training camp trying to take my job. But even at that point, I convinced myself years ago that I'm not competing against anybody else. I've got to just kick the best I can. And if the guy beats me out because he kicked better than me, then he deserves the job. Why should I be upset? Right. So I've got to, again, so that brings me back to the point that I'm competing with myself. So there's a lot of people in their everyday lives that don't understand that philosophy of kind of competing against yourself and doing the best that specifically you can do under whatever circumstances that you were given, whatever job it was, whatever you're referring to, project it was, whatever it was. But that's the thing, is you have to understand, as a human being, we have doubt, we have fear. It's in us. Okay. And that's what we all have to challenge ourselves. Yes, we can get burned by being fearless and having something really bad happen. And then, yes, we learn from those mistakes. I've talked about in previous episodes the being fearless and the fear of failure. If you got a fear of failure, you'll never experiment. You'll never get outside that box and never try to learn anything new, because you're afraid of failing. And we can't live like that. We have to have faith again. So being faithful, being fearless, and understanding that there are good things that happen when you have your mind right and you're doing good things, and having optimism. Obviously, I think that could hurt you at times, yes, but being optimistic about stuff. I would much rather be an optimistic person rather than a pessimistic person, because those kind of people who are pessimistic, they have to be miserable. I don't know. I couldn't even understand living a pessimistic lifestyle. I would be miserable, I think. So I think being optimistic and just having joy in life and knowing that things will work out. And again, I mentioned, I think it might have been last episode about, when we fail, it's not a failure. It's a learning process. We have an opportunity to learn. Nobody, and I repeat this, Michael Jordan, all these guys, the Wayne Gretzky's of the world, Michael Jordan's of the world, all these guys that have been incredibly athletic and successful in their careers, they have failed more than anybody else in the world has. To think about that, they really have. They've had to have all those failures to learn from them and grow from them and get better and stronger and smarter. And so being fearless and having faith in what you're doing, you're gonna, you might experience some failures. It's okay, because failures are not failures, in my opinion. Everybody's going to fail. We're not perfect. Okay. We clearly are not perfect. And so we have to understand that failures are an opportunity for us to get better. And that is life. I don't know how else to tell you. That is life. That's you pass a test, you fail a test, whatever the case may be, but you're testing yourself. And if you fail the test, well, you got to study and get better and pass it the next time. So it's really an opportunity for you to kind of learn from your mistakes. We've heard that before. It's not about, falling down. It's about how you get up. You've all heard that before. And that's really the mindset. And it's very true. Very true. I don't need to beat that up anymore. We all understand, living the right way, and learning and understanding what failure is, and knowing that, we're not going to fail it. We're going to fail at times, but it's not really necessarily a failure. It's a learning process. So having that faith, and being fearless, and understanding the ultimate goal is really exposing our capabilities. Because going back to the whole premise of this whole episode is really the capabilities, what we are missing out on, what we actually could be capable of doing, right? So we will never know. And I feel sorry for the people that are so content with their life, and living in a little bubble, and not getting outside that box, and just, maybe they're fine. Maybe I shouldn't feel sorry for them. Maybe those are people that are perfectly fine with their lives, which I can't judge clearly. So, but they will never know. They will never experience. That's another big word I want to throw in there. You'll never have the opportunity to experience what you can if you're always in that bubble, if you never explore, if you never, get outside the box, if you never, are fearless, if you don't have faith in what you're doing, you probably won't grow. And I don't want to be somebody that has a limited time on this earth. We all have life is short. You've heard that before as well. We all have a very limited time. Yes, I can't believe I will be 53 years old in about, I don't know, 18 days, something like that, the 22nd of this month. It's crazy. It's crazy to think that I years ago when I was a kid, I couldn't imagine myself being 53 years old. But time flies so fast. And I am thankful that I was able to get outside the box, be optimistic, be fearless, have faith in what I was doing, because I will never have known what I was capable of doing physically. If I didn't trust the kicking process, I had a passion for it. So I was just down dirty. I was like, man, I'm gonna learn this. I want to do this. It was just something I really enjoyed. I want to get down and dirty with this. I want to really, really, really get the best I can be, because I just really loved it. I had a big passion for it. So that's a huge deal too. That's another big word I want to throw in there as well. It's that's a tough one though, because you have to find the passion first. You can't just develop passion over. I'm sure you can, but there's a process of what how you figure out what it is you're really passionate about. That's a tough one for me too, especially after I retired from football. I'm like, what the heck am I going to do now? What am I passionate about now? And slowly but surely, I kind of realized that, coaching, of course, and learning, teaching other kids how to kick the way I did, because it was a very cool experience, being my size and being able to do what I did. But also, knowing that I was able to kind of, throughout my life, going, my health and wellness journey, my fitness journey, I developed a passion in fitness. And I didn't think that when I retired. I've told you this story before in previous podcasts, man. When I retired from football, the last thing I wanted to do was go to a gym. I'm like, I'm out of here. And guess what happened? I told you guys, I got fat, I got lazy, my back started hurting. I'm like, man, this sucks. I think I need to get back in the gym and get back in shape, because I think that's gonna help. And so, again, live and learn. I learned by being a failure at working out. I learned that affects me in a negative way. So guess what I got to do now? I got to live a lifestyle but it's okay. I really enjoy it. It really keeps me young, keeps me energetic. Again, I'm going to try to live as long as I possibly can. And that's my goal. And I've got to be fearless about it. I've got to have faith that I'm going to be healthy for many, many, many more years. And so I really encourage that for a lot of people, especially, if you're out there, you're happy, you got a great, marital life, you got a great, career in your job, and things are really, really hunky dory for you, man, you've earned it. That's good. You got outside the box. You had faith, and you were fearless, and you found out what you were capable of doing. You think about all these successful businessmen in the world, and think about how much time they spent to learn a lot of the things that they do now. And, that's part of the process of finding out what they're capable of doing is learning things that they could enhance their business with, and so forth. And so you really have to have a really, come to Jesus talk with yourself at times, I think. And there are things that we don't understand, and that's perfectly okay. We all know that, it's life is not, it's not simple. We're gonna hit some roads. We're gonna have to jump over some hurdles and through some hoops, and we're gonna have to do some things we may not be comfortable with doing. And just like Esther in that quote I was just giving you, that verse of the Bible, she was fearless. She was fearless. She wasn't prepared, but she had no other choice. So that's the thing, is like that. We really want to make sure that we in a situation where we get ourselves into where we don't know what the outcome is going to be. If you're fearless, if you're kicking carefully, if you're trying harder to make a kick because it's going to matter more, ultimately, if you're doing something different than the process that you've mastered or come close to mastering, then you don't have faith in it. You've lost faith in what you always knew. And in that situation, it's not on purpose. It's just because you just have such a love and such a desire and a lot of accountability. Clearly, as a kicker trying to make, the story I'm going with this is a kicker trying to make a game-winning kick. There's a lot of accountability on your shoulders. Everyone's watching. It's on you, man. Well, clearly you want to make the kick because you're going to be the hero and things are going to be great. And, your team's going to lift you up on their shoulders and run you off the field. And, we all live that dream. And that never happened to me too. I don't know why, but I don't know. Maybe I just ran away from the guys. I didn't want to get squished or something. But my point is really that those kind of things in life are very, very rewarding. But if you don't get out of that comfort zone, if you don't understand your capabilities, if you don't have that faith and your fear and fearless, you'll never know. And that's the thing, that's really the bottom line of capabilities, that we all have a lot more capabilities than we really think we do. And I'm not one to just stay content and coast and be complacent. That was the first thing. I may have mentioned this to you guys in previous episodes, but I tell a real life story. When I was told, we talk about the guy that comes down in the locker room on the last day of cuts, and if he tells you to go see the coach and bring your playbook, that means you're cut. We call him the Grim Reaper because he's here to take your life, basically. Obviously it's a vigorous speech, but that's so the moment that our Grim Reaper came to the locker room and pointed at the other kicker and told him to go get his go to his playbook and go see coach, I knew at that moment that I'd made the team. Well, guess what? I was excited for like 10 seconds, but after that I'm like, well, crap, what do I do now? Well, I quickly realized, well, I have to get better. I can't coast. I reached kind of a goal of, I made it in the NFL. That was a challenge that I was really hoping to really master and succeed with. And I did. Okay. But now what? Now I made the team. Now I made the NFL. Well, now what? Well, now I got to get better. Now I got to maintain it. Right. And so I had to get uncomfortable with some things. It was an incredible learning experience. I can promise you that. I think I had an ulcer at one point, and the stress was so bad. And Coach Coughlin was pretty rough. Don't get me wrong; he's an incredible coach, an amazing man, dedicated. My gosh, very dedicated. But there were periods of time where I was incredible, and of course I'm young, and I didn't know back then really what his discipline really meant. I was just kind of like, man, this guy's really a hard butt, you know what I mean? Like he's really, really strict, and I was trying to, deal with a lot of pressure because everyone's kind of pointing their finger at me. But again, that was, I had to learn to be fearless. I had to learn to be faithful in what I knew as a kicker. And that's the thing, is when you get successful like that, and you're capable of doing certain things. That's another thing I want to point out, is really when you're talking about situations where you're having to make a kick, you have to remind yourself that you're capable of making kicks. That if you have doubt, you're over, you're done. Those are the kickers that miss a lot of important kicks, the ones that kind of have a little bit of a doubt. And I can tell you honestly a true story. And I learned this from Brian Barker, who was took me under his wing. He was the punter on the team of the Jaguars. He had 5 years of NFL experience at the time, and so he was my mentor in football, basically, with regards to playing in the NFL and what it's like to be a professional and all that. And he taught me a lot of stuff. And one thing that I remember going into, because we always stayed we were roommates at hotels, and we would stay literally at every game we played, whether it was home or away, we always stayed in a hotel. That was Coughlin's rule. But I'd walk in, if Brian was there before me, I'd walk in and he'd be, sitting on the bed watching, back then we had little DVD players that were like little mini computers, but he'd watch a little DVD of his highlight kicks. and and listening to the announcers. Oh, Barker with a 54-yard punt, or hearing that and watching that, you're just reminding yourself that you are capable of doing some amazing stuff. And so that's really where I'm going to leave this off, this episode of being capable and knowing that there's always room for improvement. You just have to get outside the box, be fearless, have faith, and understand that there is a way, to find out what you're really capable of. And I think till the day we all die, I think if we had that mindset of wanting to learn and be better in all cases, in every areas of life, we are going to have to learn, and we're going to have faith. Clearly, we're going to have to be fearless. We're going to have to understand that we're still, even when you think you've mastered something, you're probably capable of even more. So that's really where I'm going with it, is as far as just kind of being relentless with your mindset, and just not, I don't want to say not being happy with where you're at. And, yeah, you found some success, and you found some good capabilities that you've learned, and you've earned them. But I'm saying that, you want to really make sure that you're understanding that there's always room for more. We again, because we're never perfect. That's why. We are not perfect. We can't be perfect. And so let's strive to be as perfect as we can. And that's really where the capabilities shine. That's really where we're going to really discover our true capabilities, is when we will not give up. We are relentless in understanding and trying our best to be perfect. That was my job as a kicker in the NFL. I knew every year, practice, yes, maybe in a game, because I've seen it in games where a full season kickers will not miss a kick. Not one kick. They go 100% throughout. It doesn't happen very often, but it's possible. My point is, but maybe not in practice. I've never heard of any kicker not missing any kicks in practice or game or anything. Every time they put their foot on the ball, they've made it. That's probably not true. Okay, so we want to strive to be perfect, and we'll never know our capabilities unless we do all of those things I've mentioned a million times on this episode. So with that, breathe, have a good time. Enjoy life, enjoy the things that you're doing, have passion for those, be fearless, be faithful, and understand we're always capable for more. So with that, have a great night, and we'll see you next Monday night at 5:30 on Zealous Wellness with Mike Hollis.
Thank you for watching Zealous Wellness with Mike Hollis. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. See you next time.